The dust-laden wind carried a woman's sobs across the desolate stage stop as Zara Nicholson clutched her damp handkerchief, her entire world collapsing around her. The year was 1878, and the Montana Territory's unforgiving landscape seemed to mirror the cruelty of her circumstances, abandoned by her fiancé, who had promised to meet her here 3 days ago to start their new life together. The stage that had brought her from Boston had long departed, leaving her with nothing but 2 trunks of possessions and a rapidly dwindling supply of hope. The station keeper had been kind enough, but his patience was wearing thin. "Miss, I can't be holding a room forever on promises," he'd told her that morning. "Either pay for another night or make other arrangements." Zara had no other arrangements, no family to speak of since her parents' passing, no friends in this wild territory, and now, it seemed, no fiancé either. William had written such beautiful letters describing their future ranch. But as the sun began its western descent on this 3rd day of waiting, reality settled upon her shoulders like a leaden shawl. Her lavender traveling dress, once crisp and proper, now hung wrinkled and trail-worn. Her auburn hair, which she'd pinned so carefully before the stage's arrival days ago, had come loose in several places, tendrils framing her tear-streaked face. At 22, Zara had gambled everything on this new beginning. The sound of approaching hoofbeats barely registered through her despair. The station was relatively quiet this afternoon, most travelers having come and gone with the morning stage. Zara didn't bother looking up, assuming it was just a local coming to collect mail or supplies. No more waiting. The deep voice caused her to lift her gaze. Atop a magnificent chestnut stallion sat a man whose presence commanded attention. The sun at his back cast him in silhouette, but she could make out broad shoulders beneath a dusty duster coat, a weathered Stetson pulled low over his brow, and a determined set to his jaw partially obscured by several days' worth of stubble. "I beg your pardon," Zara managed, hastily wiping away tears. The cowboy dismounted in one fluid motion, boots raising small puffs of dust as he approached. Up close, she could see eyes the color of a summer storm gray with hints of blue studying her intently. "Name's Nathan Quinn," he said, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "And unless I'm mistaken, you're the Eastern lady who's been left high and dry." Zara straightened her spine, dignity resurfacing despite her distress. "My situation is hardly your concern, Mr. Quinn." A smile ghosted across his sun-weathered face. "Maybe not, but I've watched you sitting here for 3 days straight, getting more heartbroken by the hour." He gestured toward the station. "Old Frank in there says your man ain't coming. You've discussed me with the station keeper." Indignation colored her cheeks. "This is Timber Creek, madam. Not much happens that folks don't discuss." Nathan's expression softened slightly. "William Harrington isn't coming. Never was." The name of her fiancé on this stranger's lips sent a chill through Zara. "How could you possibly know?" "Because Harrington's been pulling this same scheme across 3 territories," Nathan said, his voice gentle despite the harsh truth. "He writes to well-bred Eastern ladies, promising marriage and a prosperous ranch life. Gets them to sell everything and come out west. Sometimes he meets them, takes whatever money or valuables they brought, then disappears. Other times, like with you, he doesn't show at all." Zara felt the blood drain from her face. The letters, the passionate declarations, the detailed descriptions of a ranch that apparently didn't exist. And the money she'd sent ahead her entire inheritance to help secure their future. "No," she whispered. "That cannot be true." Nathan Quinn didn't argue, just watched her with those storm cloud eyes as realization dawned across her features. "My funds," she said finally. "Everything I had. Gone." He nodded once grimly. I'm afraid so, Miss Nicholson. The use of her name startled her. How do you? I've been tracking him, Harrington, for the better part of a year. Nathan settled his hat back on his head. I'm with the Pinkerton agency. Started following his trail after he swindled a widow in Wyoming. You're the fifth lady I've found in his wake. Fresh tears threatened, but Zara fought them back. She'd cried enough. So you're not actually a cowboy? The question seemed to amuse him. I'm both, madam. Rancher by trade, Pinkerton by circumstance. My sister was one of Harrington's earlier victims. Understanding dawned. This wasn't just a job for him, it was personal. Zara glanced at her trunks, then back to the man standing before her. What am I to do now? The question emerged barely above a whisper. Nathan Quinn extended his hand. First, you stop waiting for a man who isn't coming. Second, you decide what kind of life you want to build instead. Zara looked at his outstretched hand, calloused, strong, honest. I have nowhere to go. I've got a proposition for you, Miss Nicholson. His expression remained serious. I need to continue tracking Harrington. My ranch is a half-day's ride from here. I'm looking for someone to help my housekeeper with the main house and my accounts while I'm away. You'd have safe lodging, decent pay, and time to figure out your next steps. Suspicion flared. Why would you offer employment to a complete stranger? Because you can read and write properly, which is clear from your speech and demeanor. Because you need help. And because I won't leave another of Harrington's victims stranded if I can help it. Nathan's gaze was steady. No strings attached. You're free to leave anytime. Zara glanced around the dusty stage stop, reality settling in her mind. No fiancé, no money, no prospects. And winter approaching in a territory she knew nothing about. What choice do I have? She asked, more to herself than to him. Nathan Quinn's expression softened. There's always a choice, Miss Nicholson, but some are clearer than others. Zara stood, brushing dust from her skirts with as much dignity as she could muster. Very well, Mr. Quinn, I accept your offer of employment, temporarily. Temporarily, he agreed with a slight nod. Frank, he called to the station keeper, help me load the ladies' trunks, will you? She'll be coming to Quinn Ranch. As they secured her belongings to Nathan's horse and a pack horse he'd brought along, Zara couldn't help wondering if she was making another terrible mistake. But as they set off toward the mountains with the setting sun gilding the landscape in gold and crimson, she felt something she hadn't in days, a flicker of hope. Nathan Quinn rode slightly ahead, his back straight, shoulders broad beneath his duster. A man of few words but decisive action. A man who'd offered help when she needed it most. Mr. Quinn, she called as their horses picked their way along the trail. He turned slightly in his saddle. Yes, Miss Nicholson, thank you. The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had to offer. He touched the brim of his hat in acknowledgement, and they continued their journey in companionable silence as the Montana wilderness stretched before them, vast and unknown. The trail to Quinn Ranch wound through pine-scented forests and across meadows where wildflowers still bloomed despite the approaching autumn. Zara, though an accomplished rider in Boston's parks, found the mountain terrain challenging. Nathan set a pace that respected her abilities without patronizing her, occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing brief stories about the area. That ridge there, he said, gesturing to a rocky outcropping, was where I tracked my first mountain lion. 16 years old and too stubborn to admit I was scared half to death. Zara studied the rugged landscape. Did you catch it? No, Nathan replied with a hint of a smile. It caught me watching and decided I wasn't worth the trouble. Good lesson in humility. As dusk settled over the mountains, Nathan led them to a small clearing beside a creek. We'll make camp here for the night. Ranch is still a few hours' ride, and these trails aren't friendly in the dark. Zara dismounted with as much grace as her stiff muscles allowed, trying to mask her apprehension. She'd never spent a night outdoors in her life. Nathan seemed to sense her unease as he efficiently unloaded their horses. "Don't worry," he said, nodding toward a fallen log. "Have a seat. I'll have a fire going in no time." True to his word, within minutes flames were dancing merrily, pushing back the growing darkness. Nathan produced jerky, biscuits, and coffee from his saddlebags, preparing a simple but welcome meal. Zara accepted the tin cup of coffee gratefully, its warmth seeping into her chilled hands. "May I ask you something, Mr. Quinn?" she ventured after they'd eaten in companionable silence. "Nathan," he corrected. "Out here, formalities seem a bit unnecessary, and yes, you may ask." "Nathan," she tested the name. "How does a rancher become a Pinkerton agent?" He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "My sister Catherine," he began, his voice taking on a distant quality. "She was widowed young during the war. Had a small inheritance that was supposed to see her through. Then William Harrington came to town." His jaw tightened. "Called himself William Harrison then. Charming, full of grand plans and bigger promises." Zara felt a painful twinge of recognition. "Like with me." Nathan nodded. Kathy was smitten, sold her house, packed up her life, and headed west with him. By the time she realized what he was, he disappeared with everything she had. His eyes reflected the dancing flames. She couldn't face coming home with nothing, took work in a saloon in Cheyenne. The implications hung heavy in the air. "Is she?" "She died of fever 2 winters ago," Nathan said quietly. "I'd been searching for her for almost a year by then, found her grave instead." "I'm so sorry," Zara whispered. "After that, I connected with the Pinkertons. They were already building a case against Harrington. We made an arrangement I could continue running my ranch while following leads when they arose." He looked up, meeting her gaze across the fire. "You're actually the first potential victim I've reached before Harrington did his damage and disappeared." Zara looked away. "He did his damage. My inheritance is probably still recoverable," Nathan interrupted. "If he didn't show up to meet you, chances are he hasn't collected whatever funds you sent ahead. Part of his scheme is having ladies wire money to banks in frontier towns. He typically waits until they arrive before collecting it and disappearing." Hope flickered. "You think my money might still be there?" "It's possible. Which bank did you send it to?" "First Montana Territorial in Helena." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "That's where we'll start looking. Once you're settled at the ranch, I'll ride to Helena and make inquiries." The conversation lulled, and Zara became acutely aware of their situation alone in the wilderness, the night pressing in around their small circle of firelight. Despite her upbringing's strict warnings about propriety, she felt oddly secure in Nathan Quinn's presence. "I should prepare your bedroll," he said, rising to his feet. "My what?" A flicker of amusement crossed his features. "Your sleeping arrangements, Miss Nicholson. I have an extra blanket and bedroll. It won't be as comfortable as you're accustomed to, but it'll keep you warm." He efficiently laid out a thick canvas ground cloth, wool blankets, and even produced a small pillow from his pack. "For the lady," he said, offering it with a slight bow that bordered on teasing. "And where will you sleep?" Zara asked, suddenly concerned about their proximity. Nathan pointed to the other side of the fire. "Over there. Far enough for propriety, close enough to keep watch." As they settled for the night, Zara found herself studying her unexpected protector across the dying embers. Nathan Quinn was unlike any man she'd encountered in Boston society. There was a directness to him, an absence of pretense that she found both unsettling and refreshing. "Nathan," she called softly, unsure if he was still awake. "Yes." His voice came immediately. "What if we don't recover my money?" A moment passed before he answered. Then you'll have honest work and a safe place until you decide what comes next. Your life isn't over, Zara. It's just taking an unexpected trail." The use of her given name should have bothered her, but instead, it felt right in that moment, two people connecting across a campfire in the vast Montana night. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling the blanket tighter. "Get some rest," came his reply. "Tomorrow you meet your new home." Sleep claimed her eventually, beneath a canopy of stars brighter than she'd ever seen, with the gentle sounds of the creek and Nathan's occasional movements keeping loneliness at bay. Morning broke clear and crisp over the mountains. Zara awoke to find Nathan already up, tending a small fire with coffee brewing. Her muscles protested as she sat up, unaccustomed to sleeping on the ground. "Good morning," Nathan greeted, offering a steaming cup. "Sleep well." "Better than I expected," she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. Her hair had come completely loose from its pins overnight, cascading past her shoulders in auburn waves. She became self-conscious as Nathan's gaze lingered a moment before he turned back to the fire. "We should reach the ranch by midday," he said, busying himself with breaking camp. "Martha, that's my housekeeper, will have lunch waiting. She doesn't know about you yet, but she's always complaining I need more help around the place." They ate a quick breakfast of jerky and hardtack before loading the horses and continuing their journey. As they rode, the forest gradually gave way to open meadows and rolling hills. By mid-morning they crested a ridge, and Nathan reined his horse to a stop. "There it is," he said with quiet pride. "Quinn Ranch." Zara caught her breath. Below them stretched a picturesque valley with a meandering river cutting through its heart. Near the river stood a substantial two-story log house surrounded by several outbuildings, corrals, and a large barn. Beyond, cattle grazed on grasslands that extended to distant foothills. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. "Started with 20 acres and 6 cows," Nathan said. "Now it's over 2,000 acres and 500 head of cattle. Took 12 years of hard work. You built all this yourself?" "My father started it. I expanded after he passed." Nathan adjusted his hat. "It's not the biggest spread in the territory, but it's solid, self-sufficient." They continued down into the valley, and as they approached the ranch, Zara saw activity around the building's cowboys moving between corrals, smoke rising from the main house chimney. A border collie came bounding to meet them, barking excitedly. "That's Scout," Nathan said as the dog circled their horses. "Best cattle dog in 3 territories." A woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on an apron. Short and stout with gray hair pulled into a severe bun, she squinted at them as they approached. "Nathan Quinn." "3 days you been gone with barely a word about when you'd return," she called, hands on her hips. "And who's this you've brought home?" Nathan dismounted and helped Zara down from her horse. "Martha, this is Miss Zara Nicholson. She'll be staying with us for a while, helping with the house and the books." Martha's keen eyes assessed Zara from head to toe. "Eastern lady, by the look of those clothes. Another of Harrington's victims." Zara flushed with embarrassment, but Nathan's hand on her elbow steadied her. "Miss Nicholson is our guest and new employee," he said firmly. "She deserves our respect and hospitality." Something in his tone made Martha soften. "Of course she does. Come in, Miss Nicholson. You must be exhausted. I've got stew on the stove and fresh bread just out of the oven." The main house was surprisingly spacious and well-appointed. Polished wood floors, comfortable furniture, and large windows created a welcoming atmosphere that immediately put Zara at ease. The main floor consisted of a generous living area with a stone fireplace, a dining room with a long table that could seat at least 12, and a kitchen that was Martha's domain. "Your room will be upstairs, second door on the right." Martha informed her as she served bowls of fragrant beef stew. Used to be Catherine's room. Been keeping it clean just in case. Nathan, who had stepped out to speak with his foreman, returned as they were finishing lunch. Jack says everything's been quiet, no problems while I was gone. Course not, Martha huffed. These boys know better than to cause trouble on my watch. Nathan smiled at the older woman's fierceness, then turned to Zara. Would you like to rest, or would you prefer a tour of the ranch first? Eager to learn more about her new surroundings, Zara chose the tour. Nathan showed her the barn, corrals, bunkhouse where the ranch hands lived, the smokehouse, and finally the small office attached to the main house where the ranch accounts were kept. This is where you'll likely spend most of your time, he explained, showing her ledgers and correspondence neatly organized on shelves. I can manage the basic accounts, but I'm no bookkeeper. If you're as educated as I suspect, this should be straightforward for you. Zara examined the ledgers, noting the careful but sometimes inconsistent entries. I can certainly help organize this better. My father was a banker. He taught me double-entry bookkeeping from a young age. A banker's daughter, Nathan mused. No wonder Harrington targeted you. The reminder of her situation dampened her enthusiasm, and Nathan seemed to regret his words immediately. I'm sorry, he said. That was tactless. Zara shook her head. No, it's the truth. I was a perfect target, orphaned, financially independent, and naive enough to believe a stranger's beautiful words. She closed the ledger with a snap. I won't make that mistake again. Nathan studied her for a moment. Don't let one snake poison your view of the whole territory, Zara. There are good people here too. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or the beginnings of trust. The moment was broken by Martha calling them for dinner. That evening, after a hearty meal with Nathan and Martha, Zara was shown to her room. It was simple but comfortable, with a 4-poster bed, a dresser, washstand, and a small writing desk beneath a window that overlooked the valley. Martha had already brought up her trunks. Nathan says you're to have whatever you need, Martha said, lighting an oil lamp. Catherine left some dresses that might suit you, more practical than those Eastern fashions for ranch life. Thank you, Martha, Zara said sincerely, for everything. The older woman paused at the door. He's a good man, Nathan Quinn, best I've known. Whatever brought you here, however long you stay, you're safe now. Left alone, Zara unpacked her belongings, changing into her nightgown and robe before sitting at the desk to write in her journal. She recorded the extraordinary events of the past days, from her heartbreak at the stage stop to her unexpected rescue and arrival at Quinn Ranch. As she wrote, she found herself describing Nathan more thoroughly than was perhaps necessary: his storm-gray eyes, the quiet authority in his manner, the gentleness beneath his rugged exterior. Catching herself, she closed the journal with a sigh. She had no business developing any kind of attachment to the man. Her heart was too freshly broken, her future too uncertain. From her window, she could see a figure walking near the corrals. Nathan, making a final check of the property before retiring. Watching him move with confident purpose through his domain, Zara felt a curious mixture of emotions. Gratitude, certainly. Respect for what he'd built here. But something else stirred beneath those sensible feelings, something she wasn't ready to examine too closely. Turning from the window, she prepared for bed, exhaustion from the journey catching up with her. As she drifted toward sleep, her last conscious thought was that, for the first time in days, she felt safe. The following weeks established a rhythm to Zara's days at Quinn Ranch. Mornings began early, with breakfast shared with Nathan, Martha, and occasionally Jack Turner, the foreman. Zara spent most days in the office, reorganizing the ranch accounts, writing correspondence and creating a proper filing system. In the evenings, she helped Martha with dinner preparation, learning practical cooking skills that had never been part of her Boston upbringing. Nathan was often busy with ranch operations, but he made time each evening to review her progress with the books. These sessions, conducted over cups of coffee at the kitchen table after Martha had retired, became a highlight of Zara's days. Nathan proved to be an attentive listener and quick learner, absorbing her explanations of proper bookkeeping with genuine interest. "You've uncovered at least 3 instances where we were overcharged by suppliers," he remarked one evening, examining her neat columns of figures. "And I had no idea the South Pasture operation was costing so much more than the others." "Knowledge is power in business," Zara replied, pleased by his recognition. "My father always said that half of success is knowing exactly where you stand." "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was." Zara smiled at the memory. "He believed women should understand finance as well as men. Said it was the only way to ensure independence." Nathan's expression grew thoughtful. "A progressive view for an Eastern banker." "He saw too many widows left helpless when their husbands died," Zara explained, "including his own mother." Their conversations gradually expanded beyond ranch business. Nathan shared stories of growing up in the territory, of learning ranching from his father, of the challenges and triumphs that had shaped Quinn Ranch. In turn, Zara spoke of Boston, her education, the literary society she'd belonged to, and eventually how she'd come to correspond with William Harrington. "He wrote so beautifully," she admitted one evening, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "Described Montana as if it were paradise on earth. Said he was building something meaningful here and wanted someone of substance to share it with." Nathan's jaw tightened. "He has a gift for finding exactly what each woman wants to hear." "I wanted adventure," Zara confessed. "A life beyond Boston, drawing rooms and polite conversation. When my parents died, there was nothing keeping me there except convention." "So you leapt," Nathan said softly. "That took courage, or foolishness. There's often little difference." His eyes met hers across the table. "For what it's worth, I think Montana suits you. You're stronger than you realize, Zara." Such moments of connection were becoming more frequent, and Zara found herself increasingly aware of Nathan, the timbre of his voice, the rare occasions when he laughed, the competent strength of his hands as he worked. She caught herself watching him from windows as he trained horses or conferred with ranch hands, admiring the quiet authority he commanded without arrogance. True to his word, Nathan rode to Helena in their 3rd week to inquire about her funds. He returned 4 days later with extraordinary news. "Your money's still there," he announced without preamble, striding into the office where she was working. Trail dust coated his clothing and weariness lined his face, but his eyes were bright with triumph. Zara stood so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. "Truly, all of it." "Every cent." Harrington, or rather, his associate, tried to collect it yesterday. Bank manager was suspicious because the man couldn't answer basic questions about you. They held the funds pending investigation. Relief made her knees weak. "Thank God." "There's more," Nathan continued, removing his hat. "The Pinkerton office in Helena received my telegram. They're closing in on Harrington in Wyoming. This could be the break we need to finally catch him." Zara's relief was tempered by a sudden realization. "You'll be leaving then?" "To join the pursuit." Something flickered in Nathan's expression, regret, perhaps. "Yes, I need to ride out tomorrow. This may be our best chance." "Of course." Zara straightened, composing herself. "When will you collect my funds from Helena?" "Already done." Nathan reached into his coat and withdrew an envelope. "Bank draft for the full amount. I had them convert it for safety in transport." Zara accepted the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a bank draft for nearly $5,000, her entire inheritance. "You brought this all this way. It could have been stolen." "I wasn't about to leave your future sitting in a bank vault," Nathan said simply. "Not when I had the means to secure it." The trust implicit in that action moved her deeply. "I don't know how to thank you." "No thanks needed. It's your money." Nathan hesitated, then added, "This means you have choices now. You're not beholden to stay here." The thought of leaving Quinn Ranch created an unexpected ache in Zara's chest. In just 3 weeks, this place had begun to feel like home in a way Boston never had. And Nathan. "I'd like to stay," she said quietly. "At least until you return, to continue the work we've started." Relief crossed his features. "I'd like that. The ranch needs you." He paused. "I won't be gone long, a week, perhaps 2. That evening, Zara helped Martha prepare a special dinner to send Nathan off properly. The atmosphere was strained, with Martha fussing more than usual, and Nathan preoccupied with preparations for his journey. After dinner, Nathan asked Zara to walk with him to the corrals, where the horses he would take were already separated. "Jack will oversee daily operations while I'm gone," he explained as they leaned against the corral fence. The setting sun painted the landscape in gold and amber, casting long shadows across the ranch yard. "He knows to consult you on any business matters." "We'll manage fine," Zara assured him. "Please focus on staying safe. This man Harrington, he sounds dangerous." Nathan's expression hardened. "He's a coward who preys on women. Not much danger in that kind of man when confronted directly." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the horses graze. Something unspoken hung in the air between them, a tension that had been building for weeks. "Nathan," Zara began, uncertain how to express what she was feeling. "I need to tell you something," he said simultaneously. They both laughed nervously. "Ladies first," Nathan offered. Zara gathered her courage. "I just wanted to say, be careful, come back safely." It wasn't what she'd meant to say, but it was safer than the emotions swirling beneath. Nathan studied her face in the fading light. "I will. And when I return, perhaps we should discuss your future here more permanently." Her heart quickened. "My future?" "The ranch needs someone with your skills and intelligence." He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "We can talk when I return." The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility. For an instant, Zara thought he might kiss her and was surprised by how much she wanted him to. Instead, Nathan touched the brim of his hat in a gesture that had become familiar. "Good night, Zara. Thank you for everything you've done here." "Good night, Nathan. Safe travels." She watched him walk toward the house, tall and straight-backed in the gathering dusk, wondering what he had been about to say before he caught himself. Nathan departed before dawn the next morning. Zara rose early to see him off, handing him a package of food Martha had prepared and wishing him Godspeed. As his figure disappeared down the trail, she felt a hollow sensation in her chest that no amount of busy work could fill. Days passed slowly without Nathan's presence. Zara threw herself into ranch affairs, expanding her duties beyond the office to help Martha with household management, and even assisting Jack with payroll for the ranch hands. The Cowboys, initially skeptical of the Eastern lady, had come to respect her efficiency and no-nonsense approach to business matters. A week passed with no word from Nathan. Then 10 days. By the 14th day, Zara found herself watching the trail from Helena with increasing anxiety. Martha tried to reassure her. "That boy has been disappearing and reappearing his whole life," the older woman said as they kneaded bread dough together. "He's like a mountain cat, always lands on his feet." "I'm not worried," Zara lied, punching the dough with perhaps more force than necessary. Martha gave her a knowing look. "Course you're not, and I'm the Queen of England." That evening, as Zara sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jack approached with a telegram in hand. "Ryder just brought this from town," he said, offering the paper. "From Helena." Zara's hands trembled as she unfolded it. The message was brief. Harrington apprehended, stop injured in pursuit, stop recovering Helena hospital, stop home soon, stop Nathan relief and concern warred within her. He was alive but injured. How badly? The telegram offered no details. Jack, reading over her shoulder, whistled softly. "Finally got the bastard," he said with satisfaction. "Hope Quinn put a bullet in him before they took him in." "Jack," Zara admonished, though part of her shared the sentiment. "Just saying what everyone's thinking, Miss Nicholson. That snake hurt the boss's sister something fierce. Quinn's been hunting him for years." The next 3 days were an agony of waiting. Zara found herself unable to concentrate on accounts or correspondence, instead wandering restlessly between the house and the yard, eyes constantly straying to the trail from Helena. On the 4th day after the telegram, Scout's excited barking alerted the ranch to an approaching rider. Zara rushed to the porch, heart pounding, to see Nathan making his way slowly up the trail. Even from a distance, she could tell he was riding carefully, his posture stiffer than usual. She didn't wait for him to reach the house. Without thinking, she lifted her skirts and ran down the path to meet him. Nathan reined his horse to a stop as she approached, a smile breaking through his evident weariness. "That's quite a welcome," he said, his voice rougher than she remembered. Now that she was closer, Zara could see the damage. A healing cut ran along his left cheekbone, and he held his left arm carefully, suggesting injury beneath his shirt. "You're hurt," she said, reaching up to steady him as he dismounted with a barely suppressed groan. "Nothing that won't heal," he assured her, but he didn't protest when she slipped beneath his right arm to support him. "Couple of cracked ribs, some cuts and bruises." "What happened?" "Harrington didn't come quietly. Had hired guns waiting when we tracked him to an old mining camp." Nathan's face darkened at the memory. "2 Pinkerton agents were wounded before we subdued him." They walked slowly toward the house, where Martha and several ranch hands had gathered. "But you got him?" Zara pressed. Nathan nodded, satisfaction evident despite his pain. "He's in custody in Helena." With witnesses from 3 territories and solid documentation of his schemes, he'll be going away for a long time. Martha took charge once they reached the house, ordering the men to fetch hot water and clean bandages while she helped Nathan to a chair in the kitchen. Zara hovered anxiously as Martha removed his shirt to reveal purpling bruises across his ribs and a bandaged wound on his upper arm. "Lord have mercy," Martha muttered. "You've been riding like this for days. You're lucky those ribs didn't puncture a lung." Nathan winced as she began cleaning his wounds. "Didn't have much choice. Had to give my statement to the territorial marshal, then get home." His eyes sought Zara's over Martha's bustling form. "How have things been here?" "Fine," she assured him. "Everything's running smoothly. Jack has been an excellent temporary foreman. And you're well." There was something in his tone that suggested he was asking more than a casual question about her health. "I'm fine," she said softly. "Better now that you're home safe." Something flickered in his eyes at the word home, but Martha interrupted any further conversation by announcing that Nathan needed rest and no disturbances. She herded Zara from the kitchen despite her protests. "That man needs sleep more than conversation," Martha declared firmly. "You can talk his ear off tomorrow." Reluctantly, Zara retreated to her room where she paced restlessly, relief at Nathan's return mingling with concern for his injuries and a growing awareness of what his presence had come to mean to her. The following morning, Zara rose early and found Nathan already at the kitchen table, moving stiffly but looking more rested. He wore a clean shirt, his face freshly shaved around the healing cut on his cheek. "Good morning," she greeted him, suddenly shy in a way she hadn't been before his departure. "Morning," he replied, watching her with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. "I was hoping we might talk, after breakfast." Martha, humming as she prepared eggs and biscuits, pretended not to listen but moved with unusual efficiency to serve them, and then announced she needed to check on the chickens. Alone in the kitchen, Zara and Nathan regarded each other across the table. "You look better today," she ventured. "Amazing what a real bed and clean bandages can do," he replied with a hint of his usual dry humor. Then, more seriously, "I've been thinking about our conversation before I left, about your future here." Zara's heart quickened. "Yes." Nathan set down his coffee cup carefully. "When I was lying in that hospital bed in Helena, not entirely sure I'd make it back here, I realized something important. Life's too short for hesitation." His gray eyes held hers steadily. "I don't want you to stay on as an employee, Zara." Her heart plummeted. Despite the recovery of her funds, despite knowing she had options, the thought of leaving Quinn Ranch, of leaving Nathan, was unexpectedly painful. "I see," she managed, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Of course. Now that Harrington has been apprehended, there's no reason for our arrangement to continue." "That's not what I meant," Nathan said quickly, reaching across the table to catch her hand. "I'm saying this all wrong." He took a deep breath, wincing slightly as his injured ribs protested. "What I'm trying to say is I don't want you as an employee because I want you as a partner." Zara stared at him, uncertain she'd heard correctly. "A partner, in every sense of the word." Nathan's voice grew more confident. "These past weeks, watching you bring order to the chaos of my accounts, seeing how you've adapted to ranch life, getting to know your mind and your heart. I've come to care for you, Zara, deeply." Joy bloomed within her, but caution tempered it. "Nathan, I've been hurt once by rushing into things with a man I barely knew." "I understand that," he said, his thumb tracing circles on her hand. "I'm not asking for an immediate answer, just a chance to court you properly. To show you that what I feel is real, and to give you time to be certain of your own feelings." "And if I decide to leave?" she asked, needing to test his sincerity. Pain flickered across his features, but he nodded. "Then I would wish you well and be grateful for the time you've spent here. Your happiness matters to me, Zara, even if it's not with me." The simple honesty of his words touched her deeply. This was nothing like William Harrington's flowery declarations and grand promises. This was a good man offering his heart with no guarantees asked in return. "I would like that," she said softly. "The courting, I mean." The smile that transformed Nathan's face made her breath catch. Even with his injuries, he was handsome in that moment, hope and joy erasing the lines of weariness. "Then I'll speak to Martha about chaperone duties," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Though I suspect she's been planning this since the day I brought you home." Zara laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "She did mention something about you needing a proper wife to civilize you." "Interfering old matchmaker," Nathan said with obvious affection. Then, growing serious again, "No matter what happens between us, Zara, I want you to know that your position here is secure. The work you've done has been invaluable. This ranch runs better with you than it ever did without you." "Thank you," she said, touched by his consideration. "But I'm not going anywhere, Nathan. Not for now, at least." His smile returned, warming her from within. "Good, because I have plans to show you the best of Montana territory. Starting with a proper dinner in Helena, when these ribs heal up enough for me to sit a horse comfortably." True to his word, Nathan began courting Zara with a blend of frontier practicality and surprising tenderness. Despite his injuries, he found ways to spend time with her, each day reviewing the ranch books together, teaching her to drive the wagon, sharing stories of the territory's history as they sat on the porch in the evenings. Martha, delighted by this turn of events, appointed herself chaperone with an enthusiasm that sometimes left the couple struggling not to laugh at her transparent attempts to give them privacy while maintaining the appearance of propriety. "You'd think we were 16 instead of grown adults," Nathan murmured one evening as Martha made a show of knitting in the corner of the parlor, only to remember urgent business in the kitchen minutes after they settled to talk. "She cares for you," Zara replied softly. "She wants you to be happy." "And you?" Nathan asked, his voice dropping lower. "Do I make you happy, Zara?" The question, so directly asked, deserved an honest answer. "Yes," she said simply. "More than I thought possible after what happened with Harrington." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "I'm glad. Because having you here, seeing you each day, it's changed everything for me." As October gave way to November, the ranch prepared for winter. Cattle were moved to sheltered pastures, provisions stockpiled, buildings reinforced against coming storms. Zara threw herself into these preparations, learning from Martha how to preserve food, make candles, and prepare the house for the long winter ahead. By the time the first snow fell, Nathan's ribs had healed enough for him to resume most normal activities. True to his promise, he took Zara to Helena for dinner at the International Hotel, the finest establishment in the territorial capital. Dressed in her best gown, a deep blue silk that Martha had helped alter to the current fashion, Zara felt both nervous and excited as Nathan handed her down from the wagon in front of the impressive building. "You look beautiful," he said, offering his arm. The evening was magical fine food, music from a small orchestra, and attentive service that reminded Zara of Boston's best establishments. Yet it was Nathan who made the night special, handsome in a proper suit, attentive to her every comfort, and clearly proud to have her on his arm. As they drove back to the ranch under a canopy of stars, wrapped in warm blankets against the November chill, Nathan spoke of his hopes for the ranch's future. "I've been thinking of expanding the operation," he said. "Not just cattle, but horses too. There's good money in breeding and training quality stock for the army." "That sounds promising," Zara agreed. "The ledgers show the cattle operation is stable but not growing significantly." "Exactly. And with the railroad pushing closer, we'll have better access to markets." He glanced at her. "What do you think? Would you be interested in helping develop that side of the business?" The casual way he included her in his long-term plans warmed her more than the blankets. "I'd like that very much." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the creaking of the wagon and the horses' steady hoofbeats on the packed snow. "Zara," Nathan said finally, his voice serious, "there's something I need to ask you." Her heart quickened. "Yes." He slowed the wagon, turning to face her in the moonlight. "These past months have been the happiest of my life. Having you at Quinn Ranch, it feels right in a way I can't fully explain." "I feel the same," she admitted softly. Nathan took her gloved hand in his. "I know it hasn't been long by society's standards, but out here, life moves at a different pace. When you find something precious, you don't wait to claim it." He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small box. "This was my mother's," he said, opening it to reveal a gold ring set with a modest diamond flanked by 2 small sapphires. "I'd be honored if you would wear it as my wife." Though she had begun to hope for this moment, the reality of it still took Zara's breath away. "Nathan." "I love you, Zara," he said simply. I think I've loved you since that day at the stage stop when you stood there with your head high despite your tears. You're the strongest, most remarkable woman I've ever known." Tears blurred her vision, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." The ring slipped onto her finger, a perfect fit. Nathan cupped her face gently and kissed her their first kiss, sweet and tender beneath the vast Montana sky. "I love you," she said as they parted, the words feeling right and true. "I never expected to find you, but now, I can't imagine my life without you." They returned to the ranch as an engaged couple, and Martha's delight at the news resulted in an impromptu celebration with apple pie and Nathan's best whiskey shared among the three of them. "About time," the housekeeper declared, raising her small glass in toast. "Been watching you two circle each other for months like skittish colts." "Martha," Zara protested, laughing. "Just speaking truth," the older woman said unrepentantly. "When's the wedding to be?" They decided on Christmas Day, a mere month away, but neither wanted to wait longer. Preparations began immediately, with Martha taking charge of the household arrangements while Zara wrote to what few acquaintances she had left in Boston, informing them of her engagement. Word spread quickly through the territory. Nathan Quinn was well respected, and his upcoming marriage to the refined Eastern lady who had helped capture William Harrington became a topic of interest. Neighbors from distant ranches sent congratulations and gifts, and the small church in the nearest town prepared for what would be its most significant ceremony of the year. As the wedding approached, Zara found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this point. What had begun as heartbreak at an isolated stage stop had transformed into the greatest happiness she had ever known. The irony wasn't lost on her in fleeing a false promise of love. She had found the real thing in the most unexpected place. The day before Christmas Eve, as they sat together by the fire after dinner, Nathan handed Zara a newspaper from Helena. "Thought you might want to see this," he said, pointing to a small article on the third page. The headline read, "Notorious confidence man sentenced to 20 years." The article detailed William Harrington's conviction on multiple counts of fraud and theft, naming him as one of the territory's most prolific swindlers. "Justice," Zara said softly, folding the paper. "For your sister, for all of us." Nathan nodded, his expression solemn. "Kathy would have liked you, you know. She had the same spirit, determined, adaptable." "I wish I could have known her." Zara reached for his hand. "In a way, she brought us together," Nathan said thoughtfully. "If not for her, I wouldn't have been tracking Harrington. Wouldn't have found you at that stage stop." "Then I'm grateful to her," Zara said. "Even through tragedy, she gave us both a second chance." Christmas Eve brought a light snowfall that blanketed the ranch in pristine white. The main house was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons, filling the air with the scent of forest. Ranch hands and neighbors began arriving for the pre-wedding celebration that Martha had organized, bringing food, gifts, and high spirits. Zara, momentarily overwhelmed by the boisterous gathering, slipped outside for a breath of fresh air. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant above the snow-covered landscape. She wrapped her shawl tighter, marveling at how quickly this place had become home, needed an escape. Nathan's voice came from behind her as he stepped onto the porch. "Just a moment of quiet," she replied, smiling as he joined her at the railing. "It's all wonderful, but a bit overwhelming." "Too much?" he asked, concern in his voice. "We could have had a smaller wedding." "No, it's perfect," she assured him, leaning against his solid warmth. "I was just thinking about how much has changed in 4 months. When I arrived in Montana, I thought my life was over. Now I can't wait for it to truly begin." Nathan's arm encircled her waist, drawing her closer. "Tomorrow," he promised, his breath warm against her hair. "Tomorrow," she echoed, turning in his embrace to face him. In the soft light spilling from the windows, his eyes held all the love and promise she could ever want. And every day after. Their kiss, tender yet passionate, sealed that promise beneath the vast Montana sky, the same sky that had witnessed her heartbreak and now blessed her joy. Christmas Day dawned clear and cold, the sun turning the snow-covered landscape into a dazzling white canvas. In the small church in town, decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons, Nathan waited at the altar in a new black suit, his usually unruly hair tamed for the occasion. When Zara appeared at the back of the church on Jack Turner's arm, the foreman having proudly agreed to give her away, Nathan felt his breath catch. She wore a gown of ivory satin that Martha had helped remake from one of her Boston dresses, with a lace veil that had been Jack's late wife's contribution. But it was her radiant smile that truly captivated him, the same smile that had first appeared that day by the campfire when he'd promised her a fresh start. As she walked toward him, Nathan marveled at how fate had brought them together. From the moment he'd seen her sitting alone and abandoned at the stage stop, something in him had recognized her not just as another of Harrington's victims, but as someone extraordinary, someone who belonged in his life. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged traditional vows, their voices clear and certain in the hushed church. When Nathan slipped the gold band to join the engagement ring on Zara's finger, his hands were steady. When she placed a matching band on his, her eyes held a promise that went beyond the words they'd spoken. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Their kiss was met with cheers and applause from the assembled guests, ranch hands, neighbors, townspeople who had come to know and respect them both. The celebration afterward at Quinn Ranch lasted well into the evening. Tables groaned with food, fiddle music filled the air, and dancing continued until the early hours. Through it all, Nathan kept Zara close, introducing her proudly as "my wife" with a joy he made no attempt to disguise. As the last guests departed and the ranch house finally grew quiet, Nathan and Zara stood once more on the porch, looking out at their land beneath a sky ablaze with stars. "Happy, Mrs. Quinn?" Nathan asked softly, his arms encircling her from behind. "Completely," Zara answered, leaning back against his chest, "though I'm still getting used to the name." "You wear it well," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Almost as well as you'll wear the ranch." She turned in his arms, a question in her eyes. "I filed the papers last week," Nathan explained. "Quinn Ranch is now jointly owned by both of us, equal partners in every way." Tears shimmered in Zara's eyes. "Nathan, you didn't have to, I wanted to," he said simply. "This place is as much yours as mine now. You've earned it with your work, your heart, your belief in what we're building together." Their kiss beneath the winter stars sealed more than a marriage. It sealed a partnership forged in adversity and strengthened by love, a new beginning neither could have imagined 4 months earlier. Spring came early to Montana Territory in 1879. The snow melted, revealing tender green shoots beneath, and the cattle were moved to fresh pastures. Quinn Ranch thrived under its new joint leadership, with Zara's management skills complementing Nathan's practical ranching knowledge. As April turned to May, Zara confirmed what she had suspected for several weeks: they would welcome a child before the year's end. Nathan's joy at the news was boundless. He lifted her in a gentle embrace, spinning her around the kitchen while Martha looked on with tears in her eyes. "A new Quinn," he said wonderingly, placing a hand on Zara's still flat stomach. "Our family is growing." "Yes," Zara agreed, covering his hand with hers. "Just as we are." In November, as the first snow dusted the mountains, Elizabeth Catherine Quinn arrived with a lusty cry that announced her presence to the world. With her father's storm-gray eyes and her mother's auburn hair, she was the perfect blend of them, both strong, determined, and deeply loved from her first breath. Standing by the window of their bedroom, Zara cradled their daughter while Nathan's arms encircled them both. Beyond the glass, Quinn Ranch stretched peaceful and prosperous beneath the winter sky, the same sky that had witnessed their beginning at a lonely stage stop, where a heartbroken woman's tears had caught a cowboy's attention and changed both their lives forever. "No more waiting," Nathan whispered, echoing the words he'd spoken that fateful day. "Everything I've ever wanted is right here in my arms." Zara turned her face up to his, her eyes shining with love and contentment. "And everything I never knew I needed found me when I least expected it." Their kiss, gentle and familiar yet still filled with passion, was a promise kept and renewed, a testament to the love that had bloomed from despair and grown strong in the wild beauty of the Montana Territory. As little Elizabeth's tiny hand curled around her father's finger, the circle was complete. What had begun with abandonment had transformed into belonging. What had started with tears had blossomed into joy, and what had seemed like an ending had become the most beautiful beginning.